Hello. My name is Charlie Ray, and in this video I'm going to be walking you through an edit with the Luxe Lens Perfect Portraits action set. As I do this edit, I'm going to be using these actions in what's called button mode. Up here in the actions panel, what you're looking at right now is the default setting, the default look, and it does allow you to check and uncheck options. So if you want to play it safe, go with button mode. You can't turn anything off or on. It makes using actions a lot easier. And these actions are also color-coded, so to me it's a lot easier on the eyes. So in the upper right of your actions panel, if you click that first drop-down, button mode is the very first option. And as you can see, color-coded, to me it's just a lot easier to look at. So with this image, this is the final edit that we're going for. Here's the original. So the goal is to kind of get the full background to white. I'm going to give it a little bit of a stylized tone, toning down the skin tones, bringing out some of that red and yellow, and giving it a little bit more subdued look. And then we're also going to be doing some burning and dodging to the face just to give it a little bit more dimension. The light in the original image is pretty flat, so I think that'll add some interest to it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the edits layer here, and we'll start fresh. So the very first thing I'm going to do is to really try and get that background to white. So I'm going to go up to select and go color range. So in that pop-up, I'm just going to click once on the white background, and I'm going to hold shift, and you can see the cursor change to have a plus sign. And anywhere I click or drag, it's going to start adding to that mask. And it's just looking for other similar tones to whatever you drag over. So if I drag over the purple here, it's going to start adding in those purple tones, picking up more purples. So I don't want to do that. I want to stick to the whites, the neutrals in the background around our model here. You can see it is picking up a little bit of the eyes, a little bit of those similar tones in her dress. So you can change that a little bit with fuzziness sometimes, but as I drag it down, it's starting to get rid of that lower corner. So I'm just going to leave it up, and we'll go back and fix it afterwards. So I'm going to hit OK on that. As you can see, it gave us a pretty good selection around our model. I'm going to come down here to the adjustment layers, add a curves layer, and because it was selected, it created a mask on that curves layer of exactly what we had selected. So if I hit the backslash key, it's going to show me exactly what that mask looks like, exactly where it's selected. So I'm going to use a black brush just to remove some of those areas where it's going to be brightening and changing things to true white that I really don't want. I don't want to be blowing out her eyes or here in her flower crown. So I'm just going to use black to modify that mask and make sure that we're not blowing out parts of the image that we don't want affected. We just want to get that background to white. So the last part is right down here in her dress. And it doesn't have to be super perfect. Alright, I'm going to hit backslash again to go back to the normal view. So I want to refine that mask a little bit further, get it a little bit cleaner, especially in areas of like the hair. So I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to hit Command-Option-R to refine the mask. If you're in a Windows or a PC, if you just hit that Windows button, Alt, and then R, that'll take you in as well. So Command-Option-R pops up with the Refine Mask view. I'm going to be using the second brush option here, the Refine Edge brush. And I'm just going to start painting over the edges of the hair where you can see it's a little bit sloppy. It's not quite getting all that area. So as I paint over it, you can see it's pretty subtle, but it is refining. So it's going to be picking up more of that white background or slightly off-white gray background and masking out the hair since that's not what we want to be brightening. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and confirm that, hit enter. And then with that curves layer, I'm just going to brighten up that background so that it goes to white. And you can see it's looking pretty good. I think we got a pretty good mask on her hair. So to make sure I get the background to true white, I'm going to hold Option while I click and drag on the white point slider. If you're on a PC, hold Alt and click on that white point slider. And we'll just drag it up, and you can see as that background starts to blow out and turn to pure white, you can definitely see where that's happening. So right now, everything's pure white except for a few areas around her hair and then kind of over her right shoulder there in the lower left. So I just want to get all of that to pure white, and right there will work. Looks great. As you can see, it's picking up a little bit of her stray hairs. We could go back and spend more time, depending on the image, refining the hair, getting it perfect. But for now, I think that looks pretty good, and we'll go with that. All right, our next step is I want to do a little bit of dodging and burning. And so I'm going to come down to the skin tones category and click Dodge and Burn Skin. It's going to create this folder for me, and inside I've got a dodge layer and a burn layer. And they're actually the exact same kind of layer. They're just separated for easiness sake, so you can dodge and burn on separate layers. So dodging is going to brighten the image, and so if I paint with white on that dodge layer, you can see it starts to brighten things up. Burning is the exact same kind of thing, just the opposite, so it's going to be darkening down as I paint with black. Like I say, they're the exact same kind of layers, so you can burn on a dodge layer, dodge on a burn layer. It's just easier to keep them separate in case you need to tone one down or you went a little bit too heavy, that kind of thing. You can turn down your burn and leave your dodge alone. So the goal with the dodging and burning is just to give her face a little bit more dimension. So for me, it always helps to think about directional light. So you can see our light source is somewhere over here off to the model's right, on the upper right. You can see the light is a little bit hotter up here and it falls off to the left. So I'm going to kind of create and go with that rather than fighting it as I dodge and burn. So the right side of her is going to be a little bit hotter, and then the left side of her I'm going to darken down just a little bit. So I'm going to go to the burn layer and just start darkening things down, painting in here where there might be a little bit more shadow on this side of her face, or where the light's coming across and creating a little bit of a shadow underneath her chin there. Really darkening down that corner, or where the light wouldn't be wrapping around her arms here, where they might be casting a little bit more of a shadow. Maybe on the other side of her nose here might be casting a bit of a shadow underneath, around her mouth a little bit. Alright, so I think I've got the burn pretty good. It's not quite as heavy as I want it. Up here you can see the opacity starts out at 20%. I'm going to bring that up to about 50%. Just to make the effect just a little bit more intense. So I'm going to go to the dodge now, and I want a white brush so that I'm brightening. I'm just going to come in here on the right side of her face, just give her a little bit of highlights down that right side where the light would be coming across and hitting those edges more on the right. So maybe a little bit on the nose, a little bit on that side of the lips, maybe a little bit under that eye. Not a huge effect or heavy effect, just enough to give it a little bit more dimension there. And I think 50% for that layer is a bit high. I'm going to drop that back down, just leave it at about 30%. So in the burning portion of that, I felt like it brought out a little bit too much yellow, a little bit too much red in the skin. So in that skin tones category, I'm going to click on the Remove Red. And that pops up with a blank mask. It won't do anything immediately. You just have to paint on that mask with white wherever you want to remove red. So you could use this on skin tones, you could use it on something that's actually red, like a fire truck, anything red, it's going to start pulling out those tones. So like I said at the beginning, we just kind of want to give it a little bit of a stylized look, tone down that skin. So I think that looks pretty good for the red. I'm going to also click on Remove Yellow. And rather than repainting all the skin the same way, since it's all in the same spot, I'm going to hold Option or Alt on a PC, click on that mask from Remove Red, and just drag it up to the mask for Remove Yellow, and it's going to put the exact same mask there. So next I want to demo a really cool action of this set. It's a little bit confusing at first to use, but it's super powerful once you learn, and it's Color Changer. So the color I want to change is her dress. It's kind of this lavender purple color, and there's none of that color up here in the flowers themselves. So I want to change that dress to be more of a pink to match. So I'm going to click Color Changer. It's going to pop up. This is very similar to the view we saw before, where you're just going to start selecting those areas of color you want to affect. So I'm going to click down on the purple dress to start, and then hold Shift, and my cursor will change to the plus, and I'm just going to start adding in those other areas of the dress that it didn't pick up initially that I want to change to pink. So I'm going to start going over those. Perfect. That's looking pretty good over here. Like I say, there'll probably be a little bit to clean up, but that's easy enough. I'm going to click OK on that. It's going to do its work, and then it's going to ask you to sample a color you want to change to. So it starts out as white, so you can see our dress turn to gray. I can start clicking around. I can change it to any color throughout here. Blue, green, yellow, orange. The great thing about this is that I can sample the actual color that I want. So I'm going to click up here in the pink. I don't really want it that super bright. So I'm going to scale that back just a little bit by clicking over a little bit closer to the neutral tones. So that toned it down a little bit. I might go even a little bit further. Somewhere in there I think looks good. I'm going to click OK. And then this last menu that pops up is a lot to look at. The most important thing you want to look at is the constant down here. So if you were changing color from a dark color to a light color or vice versa, that's where you're going to be able to control that. So if you want to really brighten it up or tone it down, you'll just use the constant there. I don't really want to change it too much. Maybe drop it down just a few points. And I'm going to hit OK there. So as you can see, like when we were doing our first mask, it is picking up a little bit in this area. So I'm just going to brush that out once again with a black brush on the color changer masked layer. And I can actually hit backspace again and see exactly where is being affected that I don't want. And I'm just going to paint over that whole area, over her shoulder and in her face where it's turning pink. And there we go. There's our dress changed to pink. If we get in there closer, you can see there's a little bit on that top edge that it didn't quite get. So I'm just going to go into the refine mask mode again. So Command Option R or Windows Alt R. It's going to pop up. I just want to shift that edge a little bit, stretch it outwards just a little bit with the Shift Edge option, just so that it extends out and catches that top edge just a little bit better. So I'm going to hit OK on that, and that cleaned up our top edge. That looks pretty good. It came into our necklace a little bit, so once again I'm just going to go back with black, get rid of that, and that works. So while I think our dodge and burn worked pretty well, I really want to pop the highlights, give her bright edges, just a little bit more life to them. So I'm going to use the lighting category and click the first action there, pop highlights. Here we go. I think that did exactly what we want, gave us a little more contrast, a little more interest there. Overall, I think the saturation is still a little bit too much for the stylized look we were going for. So I'm going to click down here to the adjustment layers and add a hue and saturation layer. And I'm just going to pull about 20 saturation out of the whole image itself across everything. The skin, the flower crown, everything. I really want to amp up those shadows as well, not just the highlights. So I'm going to click on Darken Shadows. And the last thing I want to do to this image is just a little bit of skin cleanup. So down here in Model Retouching, I'm going to start with Skin Soften. And once again, it's not going to do anything right off the bat. You can see it gave us a blank mask over here in the lower right. So anywhere I paint with white, it's going to start affecting there. And I don't need to go over every inch of skin, just anywhere I kind of want to smooth out or clean up a little bit. And this is just going to help not only smooth out the tones, but give kind of a light overall cleanup of the skin. And as you're doing this, you want to make sure you're doing it kind of in pieces around the face. You don't want to be going across her eyes or going in one swoop across her neck. From her chin to her neck or over her arms, anything like that. You kind of want to keep it within areas. So I might go and do her whole arm there, do this whole arm here, this little area, down in here, and then over here, all in separate pieces. So not a huge effect, but it did help smooth out our skin tones just a little bit, evened them out. So I'm also going to do Skin Smooth with the detail. And this is the exact same thing. It's not going to do anything right off the bat. I just need to paint in wherever I want that effect to take place. Okay, so once again, I don't need to go over every single area of skin, just anywhere that I want a little bit of smoothing. So like there on her cheek, there's a little bit of detail there, a little bit of redness. If I just go over that, it's not a huge change, but it just evens it out, smooths it out enough. Perfect. And with that action, it starts at 50%, so everybody's retouching is a little bit different. Everybody's retouching preferences are a little bit different. So with that opacity, you can bring it up if you want a super, super smooth skin. You can bring it down even lower than that. I'm just going to leave it at 50%. I think that looks pretty good for this edit. So right there, we're pretty darn close. I'm going to run Enhance on the eyes. So eyes, enhance, and whiten. And once again, this is one you have to paint in wherever you'd like to take place. So here on the eyes, I'm just going to come in with that white brush. Just going to come in with that white brush and brighten them up just a little bit. I think that's a little bit heavy to start with at 50%. So I'm going to drop that down to 20%. Just a tiny bit of pop to the eyes there. And that's our edit. I'm going to put all of these into a group real quick, turn them off and on. So I think we accomplished what we were aiming for. We went from kind of a flat, off-white background image without, heavy directional or interesting directional light. And I think we kind of gave it a bit more direction, gave it a little bit more style and interest. And we also added in the cool color change action there just to make everything kind of cohesive and matching. That's all for this video, and happy editing.